I found my sister in my husband's bed, and thank God I did. Those are words I never thought would come out of my mouth, but the truth is stranger, darker, and crueler than anything I could have imagined.
It happened on a Thursday night. I'd been working late and came home around midnight. The house was dark except for a thin glow slipping out from under the bedroom door. My stomach tightened. My husband, Mark, was supposed to be on a late shift, and my sister Emily had told me she was staying with a friend. I pushed the door open, and what I saw shattered me into pieces. Emily, my own sister, was in my bed with my husband. Her hair was messy, her skin flushed, and Mark was sitting up beside her like a deer caught in headlights. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My brain refused to process what my eyes were screaming at me. "Are you kidding me?" I whispered, though it came out more like a growl. Emily scrambled for the blanket, but it was too late. The betrayal was already burned into my mind. My husband reached for me, stammering, "It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" I screamed, my voice shaking the walls. "She's my sister." I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and hurled it against the wall where it exploded into shards. My mother's photo frame tipped over and cracked like even the house couldn't bear this sin. Mark jumped up, hands raised. "Please listen to me." But I wasn't listening. I lunged at Emily, my nails sinking into her arm before my father burst through the door. He'd been downstairs, dozing in the recliner, and the crash of the lamp had dragged him up the stairs. He froze in the doorway. His eyes darted between us, the tangled sheets, a panic, the guilt stamped across my husband's face. Then his voice boomed so loud the neighbors must have heard it. "What the hell is going on here?" Emily burst into tears, babbling excuses. Mark kept saying it's complicated. And me? I just stood there, shaking so hard my teeth rattled. "Complicated?" I snapped. "You've been sneaking around behind my back with my own blood." My father's face turned crimson. He stormed into the room, grabbing Mark by the collar, slamming him against the wall so hard the picture frames rattled. "You disgusting coward," he roared. "I trusted you in my home." Emily tried to pull him off, sobbing, "Dad, please." But he shoved her back. "Don't you dare call me that," he spat. "You're no daughter of mine if this is what you do to your own sister." The house was alive with screams now. Mine, my father's, Emily's. And then the neighbor started banging on the wall, shouting for us to shut up, but we couldn't. The dam had burst. Then Mark said something that froze the entire room. "You don't understand. If she hadn't come to me, I would have never survived. She saved me." The words hung there like poison. My rage twisted into confusion. Saved him? From what? Emily clutched the blanket tighter, her tear-streaked face hardening as she whispered, "If you knew the truth, you'd think me too." My father let Mark go, staring between them, his chest heaving. "What truth?" he demanded. Neither of them spoke. But in that silence, I realized something far worse than betrayal was hiding in this room. And I was about to drag it out. The silence after Emily's words felt heavier than any scream. My chest ached, my hands trembling as I pointed at her. "What do you mean, the truth?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What could possibly justify this? Sleeping with my husband." Emily's eyes darted to Mark. He looked away, shame written across his face. That silence was answer enough. It wasn't a fling, it was something deeper. My father's fists clenched. "If neither of you talks, I swear to God I'll throw you both out of this house tonight." Finally, Mark spoke. His voice was low, cracked. "I've been drowning for months. Losing money, losing sleep, losing myself. I didn't know how to tell you. I gambled away nearly everything we had." The floor tilted under me. "You what?" He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "The credit cards, the savings account. I thought I could fix it before you found out. I thought I could win it back." My knees buckled and I grabbed the dresser to steady myself. "So you lost everything, and then what? You ran to her?" I hissed, my voice slicing through the air. Emily wiped her face, her tears quickly replaced by anger. "I didn't come here to hurt you. I came to save him. He told me everything when you were too busy working late, too busy ignoring him." "Stop it!" I shouted, my throat raw. "Don't you dare blame this on me." My father slammed his fist against the wall. "Enough! You're telling me my son-in-law gambled away his family's money, and instead of coming to us, instead of admitting it to his wife, he crawled into bed with her sister?" Mark tried to step closer to me, but my father shoved him back. His voice dropped to a whisper, deadly calm. "How much?" Mark swallowed. "Almost 60,000. The room spun. My mother's voice floated from the hallway. She had woken up, her robe clutched tightly around her, tears already streaming as she whispered, 60,000? Dad pressed both hands against his forehead like he could crush the truth back inside. "You've ruined us," he muttered. But Emily wasn't done. She stood taller, her voice cutting like glass. "He didn't ruin you. I helped him. I paid off the worst of his debts. I stopped the people who were coming after him." I snapped my head toward her. "With what money? You work part-time at a coffee shop." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "Not anymore. I've been running my own side business. I've been making money off the things this family doesn't even notice are missing."
My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? She reached down to the floor and picked up her purse, the one she'd clutched so tightly when I first walked in. She unzipped it slowly, like she was savoring the moment, and dumped it across the bedspread. Necklaces, watches, cash in thick bundles. My grandmother's missing brooch, my aunt's pearl earrings. Stolen family heirlooms scattered across the sheets where she'd been with my husband? My mother gasped. My father staggered backward, hitting the dresser. And me? I felt the last thread of my sanity snap. You've been stealing from our own family? I whispered, staring at her in horror. Emily didn't flinch. And you know what? None of you noticed, not until now. Mark buried his face in his hands, his voice muffled. She kept me alive. Without her, the people I owed would have... Shut up! I screamed. Don't you dare stand there and justify this. My father's voice cracked like thunder. This isn't just betrayal. This is a crime, and I won't cover it up. Not this time. Emily's jaw tightened, but her eyes glittered with something terrifying. Defiance. You think you've uncovered everything tonight? You've only scratched the surface. My father's words hung in the air like a death sentence. A crime. Emily didn't even try to deny it. She sat on the edge of my bed with stolen heirlooms scattered across the sheets like trophies. Her tears were gone now. All that was left was a strange calmness that made my stomach turn. You think this is about a few necklaces and some cash? You have no idea how deep this goes. I folded my arms, my voice dripping with venom. Then enlighten us. Since you clearly want the spotlight, go ahead. Tell us all how you've destroyed your own family. Emily's gaze cut into me like a blade. Fine. You want the truth? Here it is. For months, Mark has been followed, watched, threatened. The people he owes money to aren't just gamblers, they're dangerous men who don't forgive. They gave him a deadline, and when he couldn't pay, they came after me. My heart dropped. You're lying! Mark shook his head slowly, his eyes red. They cornered her outside her apartment one night. She called me terrified. That's when she found out everything. Terrified? And your solution was to crawl into bed together? Emily's lips curled into a bitter smile. Don't twist this. He was broken. You weren't there. I was. My father roared, Enough! His fists were trembling at his sides. If what you're saying is true, then why not come to us? Why not call the police? Emily's laugh was hollow, sharp. The police? Against men like that? They own half of the city. No, the only way to survive was to give them what they wanted, money, a lot of it. And since Mark couldn't provide, I did. My mother clutched her robe tighter, shaking her head. By stealing from your own blood? Emily's eyes hardened. Family never gave me anything. You never gave me anything. I was invisible until you needed me for babysitting errands, favors. Well, guess what? I made myself useful. I became valuable. And I kept Mark alive. I lunged toward her, but my father caught me, his arm like a steel bar across my chest. My rage was boiling over, but his voice was steady. What else, Emily? If you've got more poison to spill it now. Emily looked at him, and then at me, and then back at Mark. I wasn't just stealing jewelry. I've been watching all of you, studying, planning, because when Mark's debt came due again, I was going to make the biggest move of all. Her purse was empty now, but she reached under the blanket and pulls out a thick folder. She tossed it onto the bed. Photos spilled everywhere. Our homes, our cars, our kids' schools. Notes scribbled in her handwriting. Times, routines, alarm codes. It wasn't just theft. It was surveillance. My blood went cold. You were planning to rob us, I whispered. Emily leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Not just rob you, replace you. I've been building a life from the pieces of yours. And I was almost done. The room spun. I couldn't tell if my legs were shaking or if the world itself was collapsing under me. My husband sat hunched, silent, tears dripping onto his palms. My mother sobbed into her sleeve. My father's face looked carved from stone. He said, "This ends tonight." But Emily's smirk whitened. You think you've won because you caught us? You have no idea who else is involved. And if you try to stop me, you'll regret it. For the first time in my life, I saw my father, the strongest man I knew, step back in fear. And that terrified me more than anything Emily had confessed. The air in the room was suffocating, thick with betrayal and fear. My father, who had always been unshakable, was pale, his fists trembling. That alone told me how bad this really was. Emily leaned back against the headboard like she owned the place. You think this ends with me. You think I'm the villain here. No, I'm just the messenger. My voice cracked as I shouted, Messenger for who? That's when the doorbell rang. We all froze. It wasn't the soft chime of a neighbor or the impatient pounding of a friend. No, this was deliberate. A long, heavy press that echoed through the house like a warning. My father's eyes darted to the window. My mother whispered, It's the middle of the night. Who could that be? Emily's smirk whitened. Right on time. I felt my blood run cold. You didn't. She shrugged, sliding off the bed, pulling her robe tighter. You wanted the truth. Well, the truth just arrived at your front door. The bell rang again, louder this time. Then came the knock. Slow, methodical, each pound rattling the frame. My father motioned for me to stay back and stormed down the hall. Mark staggered after him, pleading, "Don't open it!" But he ignored him. When he swung the door open, two men stood on the porch. Tall, broad, their faces shadowed under hooded jackets. One of them held a thick envelope. The other had his hands stuffed in his pockets. But the bulge at his hip left no doubt what he was carrying. "Evening," the first man said, his voice too calm. "We're here for what's ours." Dad's jaw tightened. "You've got the wrong house." The man chuckled, stepping into the light. His eyes were sharp, cruel. "No, Mr. Reynolds, we've got the right house. Your son-in-law owes us 60 grand, and thanks to your other daughter, we know he's here." My knees gave out. I collapsed against the wall, staring at Emily. She didn't move. She didn't deny it. She brought them here. "Where's my money?" The man asked, tapping the envelope against his palm. "We don't like waiting." My father tried to block the doorway, but the second man shoved past him, barging into our living room like he owned it. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. The man's eyes scanned the room, landing on Mark, who was trembling like a leaf. "There he is, our lucky gambler." He grinned, all teeth and menace. "You've been hiding. That's not very polite." Mark fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "Please, just give me time. I'll get it back." The man crouched in front of him, tilting his head. "You had time. You had chances. Now you've got nothing, except us." My heart hammered so hard it hurt. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady. "I told you I'd get you your money. I have plans. You just need to give me 2 more weeks."
The man stood slowly, his gaze sliding from Emily to the rest of us. 2 weeks, huh? And in the meantime, who guarantees your word? He pointed at me. Her? I staggered back, my throat tightening. "No!" Dad roared, stepping between us. "You're not touching my daughter." The man smirked. "Relax, old man. I'm not here to play rough, not tonight, but I'll be back. And if I don't get what I'm owed, someone in this house is going to pay in ways you don't want to imagine." He shoved the envelope into Mark's chest so hard it knocked him flat. "Details," he said simply. Then he and his partner turned, walking out as calmly as they'd entered. The door slammed shut, leaving behind silence so thick it hurt to breathe. Mark clutched the envelope like it was a death sentence. Emily stared at me, her voice soft but deadly. "You wanted the truth. Now you're in it." Nobody spoke for nearly a full minute after the men left. The sound of the door clicking shut was like a coffin lid closing. Mark sat on the floor, clutching the envelope, his face pale and wet with sweat. My mother had sunk into the recliner, walking back and forth with silent sobs. My father paced the living room like a caged animal, muttering under his breath. And Emily leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, like she wasn't the reason hell had just walked through our front door. Finally, Dad snapped. "That's it. I'm calling the police." Emily's eyes flared. "No, you can't. If you do, they'll kill him." She jabbed a finger at Mark. "You don't understand who we're dealing with." Dad spun on her, his voice thunder. "And whose fault is that? Who dragged them into our home?" Emily's mouth opened, then shut. For the first time that night, she didn't have a clever answer. I snatched the envelope from Mark's hands and tore it open. Inside were photographs of him, of Emily, of our house, notes about schedules, threats scribbled in thick black marker, "Pay up or else." My stomach turned. I whispered, "They've been watching us." Mark buried his face in his hands. I didn't know it would get this bad. I thought I could win it back before it spiraled. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to tear down the walls until they crushed me. Instead, I just laughed. A broken, bitter laugh that made everyone stare. "You thought you could fix it by gambling more, and when you couldn't, you let her, my own sister, turn into your savior/mistress/thief?" The words tasted like poison. Emily stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Don't you dare reduce what I did to some cheap fling. I carried him when he couldn't carry himself. I kept him alive. And yes, I stole from this family, but at least I did something. What did you do? Work late? Pretend everything was fine while your husband drowned?" Her words hit me like knives. For a second, I almost believed her, but then I remembered the jewelry scattered on my bed, the smug smile she wore when the men arrived. She wasn't just protecting him, she was enjoying the power. Dad finally pulled out his phone. "I don't care what either of you says. I'm reporting this. The police can protect us better than your half-baked schemes." Emily lunged at him, trying to knock the phone away. "You'll sign our death warrants," she screamed.
I shoved her back, my nails digging into her arm. Enough, Emily. You've already destroyed everything. If Dad wants to call the cops, let him. But when the police arrived 20 minutes later, the story twisted again. They came in with flashing lights and firm voices, separating us like we were suspects. Mark tried to explain about the debt, the threats, the men. Dad showed them the envelope. I told them everything, except the part about Emily in my bed with Mark. That betrayal was too raw, too personal. The officers exchanged looks. Then their sergeant pulled me aside. Ma'am, I have to be honest. These men, if they're who we think they are, they don't make empty threats. We'll open a file, but you need to understand, your family is in real danger. Real danger. The words echoed in my skull. By the time the police left, Dad was slumped in his chair, Mom was still crying, and Mark hadn't moved from the floor. Emily sat silently on the stairs, her eyes burning holes into me. As the red and blue lights faded into the night, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about survival. And I wasn't sure we were going to make it out alive.
The next morning, the house felt like a morgue. Nobody spoke over breakfast. Dad sat with his head in his hands, Mom stared at her untouched tea, and I paced the kitchen like a trapped animal. Mark looked hollow, like someone had scooped his insides out and left only skin and bones behind. Emily? She sat there calmly buttering her toast, as if she hadn't detonated our lives the night before. I slammed my hand on the table, rattling the dishes. You think this is funny? You think you're untouchable because you're already in too deep. Her eyes flicked up, icy and detached. I think screaming at me doesn't change the fact that those men will be back, and when they come, it won't matter who you blame. They don't care about family drama, they care about money. Bark, Dad barked. And how exactly do you plan on getting it? By stealing more from us? Emily didn't answer. She just gave a thin smile that chilled me to the bone. That's when Mom whispered something so quiet we almost didn't hear it. We sell the house. We all froze. Dad turned to her, his voice sharp. Absolutely not. This house is all we have left. Mom's voice trembled. What good is a house if we're all dead? If they come back in, her words broke into sobs. My chest tightened. The thought of selling our family home, the place where every memory lived, felt like losing the last safe part of us. But the alternative was worse. Before anyone could respond, a knock rattled the door. Not heavy like last night, but fast, urgent. Dad rose cautiously, opening it just a crack. An officer stood there, hat in hand, his face grim. Mr. Reynolds, we need you all to come down to the station, now. Confusion rippled through us, but within an hour, we were sitting in a cold interrogation room under buzzing fluorescent lights. The detective slid a folder across the table. Inside were more photos of Emily, meeting men in alleys and exchanging envelopes and walking into pawn shops with jewelry. My stomach dropped. Where did you get these? The detective folded his hands. We've been watching her for months. We had no idea it was connected to your family until last night. She's not just helping your husband. She's been laundering money for these men, moving stolen goods, acting as their inside woman. I whipped my head toward Emily. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. You knew? I whispered, my voice breaking. You weren't dragged into this. You chose it. Finally, she spoke. I was tired of being the forgotten sister, the one who had nothing. With them, I had power. I mattered. My father exploded. Power? You sold your soul to criminals and dragged us with you. And for what? Money? Attention? Emily's jaw tightened. For freedom. For finally being more than the family shadow. The detective interrupted, his tone sharp. You all need to understand this isn't going away. These men won't stop until they're either paid or behind bars. And if she's their link, he gestured toward Emily, then she's the reason you're all targets. Silence pressed down on us like a weight. Mark finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. So what happens to us? The detective leaned forward. That depends. You can cooperate, testify, and let us use what we have, or you can stay quiet, and when they come knocking again, there won't be anything we can do to help you. Dad clenched his fists. Do it, whatever it takes. I'm not letting them destroy us. But as I left the station hours later with paperwork in hand and warnings echoing in our ears, I glanced at Emily. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't broken. She was smiling, like she knew something none of us did. I thought testifying against my own sister would be the hardest thing I'd ever do. I was wrong. Courtrooms don't look like they do in the movies. They're not glamorous or dramatic. They're cold, sterile places where lives unravel under fluorescent lights and the scratch of pens. The day of Emily's arraignment, the family sat together in the second row. Dad looked 10 years older, Mom clutched a tissue that was already soaked through, and Mark sat beside me like a ghost, hollow-eyed and silent. Then they brought her in, my sister, shackled, orange jumpsuit hanging loose around her shoulders, but her face was defiant. She scanned the room until her eyes found mine, and then she smiled. It wasn't the smile of someone broken. It was the smile of someone who still believed she was winning. The prosecutor laid out everything: the theft, the laundering, the meetings with criminals, the evidence from our own house, every stolen necklace, every envelope of cash, every photograph of us she'd taken in secret. And then came the part that split my heart in two. The prosecutor turned toward me. "Mrs. Reynolds, you claim you found your sister in your husband's bed the night this all came to light. Can you confirm that?" The words echoed through the courtroom. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to nod. Yes. A murmur rippled through the benches. Mark squeezed his eyes shut. Dad's head dropped into his hands. And Emily? She leaned forward, chains clinking, and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "You pushed me there. Don't forget that." Something inside me cracked. I wanted to scream, to lunge across the aisle, to make her hurt like I hurt, but instead I sat there shaking as the judge called for order. The trial stretched on for weeks. More evidence surfaced: pawn shop receipts, text messages between Emily and the men, surveillance footage of her exchanging bags in parking lots. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't saving anyone. She had been orchestrating half of it all along. When the verdict came, the jury didn't even take a full day. Guilty, on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 15 years with the possibility of parole after 8 if she cooperated with ongoing investigations. She laughed when she heard it, actually laughed, and said, "I'll be out before you know it." That night, we went home to a house that didn't feel like home anymore. Half the windows were boarded from where the police had checked for evidence. Our bedroom still reeked of betrayal, and every corner whispered memories I wanted to erase. Dad sold the house a month later. Mom stopped answering phone calls for weeks. And Mark? Mark and I sat down one evening at the kitchen table, the silence unbearable. Finally, he said, "I don't deserve forgiveness. Not from you, not from anyone. But if you want me gone, I'll go." I looked at him, the man I loved, the man who betrayed me with my sister, the man who dragged us into hell, and all I could say was, "Go." He packed his bags that night and never came back. It's been over a year now. The scars are still there, raw and jagged. I still wake up some nights hearing the doorbell, seeing those men in my doorway. I still dream of Emily smiling in that courtroom, chains rattling as if they were jewelry. But here's the truth. I survived. And if you've made it this far with me through the betrayal, the lies, the collapse of everything I thought I knew, then maybe you'll understand why I needed to share this. Because silence protects the guilty. And stories, no matter how painful, protect the rest of us. So if you want more stories like mine, more truths people are too scared to tell, make sure you subscribe. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to speak.